For generations, the Spanish monarchy had been built on one unshakable principle: the crown always came before the individual. Every royal heir learned that duty outweighed personal desire. Every king understood that the survival of the institution depended on discipline, sacrifice, and unity. But what happens when the future of the monarchy begins thinking differently from the man who currently wears the crown? Today, we explore a fictional royal drama imagining an unseen struggle between experience and a new generation of leadership. This is not based on confirmed events, but a creative story inspired by public figures. What if the greatest challenge King Felipe ever faced wasn't politics, public opinion, or constitutional duty, but his own daughter? Let's begin. Inside the Zarzuela Palace, everything appeared calm. Staff members continued their daily routines. Meetings started on schedule. Official engagements were carefully prepared. Yet beneath the polished surface, whispers had begun spreading through palace corridors. Something had changed. Princess Leonor was no longer simply following instructions. She was beginning to ask questions. Questions nobody expected. Questions that even senior royal advisors struggled to answer. At first, King Felipe dismissed it as youthful curiosity. After all, every future monarch must eventually develop independent judgment. But over time, those questions became opinions. Those opinions became proposals. And those proposals quietly challenged traditions that had existed for decades. One evening, Felipe reviewed several briefing documents prepared for Leonor's future responsibilities. Something immediately caught his attention. Entire sections had handwritten notes. Suggestions, corrections, alternative approaches. One sentence was underlined 3 times. Respect for tradition should never prevent necessary change. Felipe stared at the words. He recognized the handwriting instantly. Leonor's. For a long moment, he remained silent. Not angry, not disappointed, simply thoughtful, because he realized something profound. His daughter wasn't preparing to inherit his role. She was preparing to redefine it. Over the following weeks, their conversations became longer, more detailed, sometimes lasting hours. Topics ranged from public engagement to communication, to how younger generations viewed the monarchy. Leonor believed future royals should become more accessible, less formal, more transparent. She argued that respect today could not simply be inherited. It had to be earned continuously. Felipe listened carefully. He admired her intelligence, her confidence, her commitment, yet he also worried. The monarchy had survived precisely because it moved cautiously. Sudden changes carried enormous risks. One wrong decision could damage public trust built over generations. Felipe reminded her that leadership often required patience. Leonor responded that patience should never become an excuse for avoiding progress. Neither was entirely wrong, and perhaps that made the discussion even more difficult. Queen Letizia quietly observed every conversation. She rarely interrupted. Instead, she watched 2 remarkable individuals trying to protect the same institution from different perspectives. Felipe believed stability was strength. Leonor believed adaptability was strength. Neither sought conflict, yet conflict emerged naturally because both genuinely cared. One afternoon, Letizia invited Leonor for tea. She asked a simple question. What kind of queen do you want to become? Leonor paused before answering. I don't want people to admire the crown because they must. I want them to admire it because they believe in it. Letizia smiled gently. Years earlier, she herself had entered the royal family. As someone who challenged expectations. Perhaps history was repeating itself. Meanwhile, palace advisors noticed subtle changes. Leonor increasingly requested direct meetings with experts. She preferred hearing multiple perspectives before reaching conclusions. Instead of relying solely on traditional reports, she asked questions about youth organizations, technology, education, environmental issues, and changing social values. Some advisors welcomed her curiosity. Others worried she was moving too quickly. One senior official quietly remarked, "She's preparing for the future before the present has finished." The comment eventually reached King Felipe. He understood exactly what it meant. His daughter was no longer simply learning. She was already leading. The turning point came during preparations for a major national address. Felipe reviewed the final speech. Everything reflected decades of royal tradition. Measured, formal, carefully balanced. Then Leonor respectfully asked, "May I suggest one change?" Felipe nodded. She proposed removing several ceremonial phrases, replacing them with simpler language ordinary citizens could immediately understand. Some advisors strongly opposed the idea. They argued the monarchy should preserve its distinctive voice. Leonor disagreed. If people no longer understand us, eventually they will stop listening. The room fell silent. Everyone waited for the king's response. Felipe considered every argument. Finally, he spoke. The words may change, but the principles cannot. Leonor smiled. I never wanted to change the principles. I only wanted more people to hear them. For the first time, several advisors realized they had misunderstood her completely. Months passed. Public appearances became increasingly successful. Leonor connected naturally with younger audiences. Her confidence grew with every engagement. Crowds appreciated her sincerity. The media began describing her as a symbol of a modern generation. International observers praised her composure. Every compliment filled Felipe with pride. Yet each success also reminded him of an unavoidable truth. His daughter was no longer becoming the future. She was slowly becoming the present. Every parent eventually reaches that moment, when the child no longer walks behind, but beside them, sometimes even ahead. Late one evening, father and daughter stood alone overlooking the palace gardens. No advisors, no cameras, no speeches, just family. Felipe broke the silence. When I became king, I believed strength meant protecting tradition. Leonor quietly listened. He continued, you've shown me that sometimes protecting tradition also means allowing it to evolve. She looked at him with quiet respect. I only learned that because I watched you. For several moments, neither spoke. The conversation required no applause. No audience, only understanding. The next morning, palace staff noticed something unusual. Several planning documents had been revised. Ideas once considered too ambitious now appeared in official discussions. Gradual reforms, new communication strategies, expanded public engagement. None were revolutionary, but together they represented something significant. A partnership, not a rivalry. The true power nobody saw coming was never about defeating one another. It was about combining experience with fresh vision. King Felipe possessed wisdom earned through responsibility. Princess Leonor possessed optimism shaped by a changing world. Separately, each had limitations. Together, they became stronger. As the years passed, historians would never describe this period as a battle between father and daughter. Instead, they would remember it as the moment one generation quietly prepared another. Not through orders, not through conflict, but through conversation. Leadership is rarely about proving who is right. It is about ensuring those who come next are even better prepared. King Felipe understood responsibility. Princess Leonor understood possibility, and perhaps the future monarchy would require both. The greatest power is not authority. It is the willingness to listen. Because sometimes the strongest king is the one confident enough to hear new ideas. And sometimes the strongest future queen is the one wise enough to respect the lessons of the past. Neither won, neither lost. Instead, both discovered that the crown's greatest strength had never been tradition alone. It had always been its ability to endure by growing with each new generation. And perhaps, that was the power nobody saw coming. The end.